Welcome to the Temple of Babalon podcast. It is Thursday, 23rd of January 2020, and this is your host, Oliver St. John. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Series 2, Episode 3. Previously, we have discussed the thelemic gnosis independently of the mainstream or orthodoxy. Esoteric thelema returns the gnosis to its ancient Egyptian source. There is no need to appeal to the writings of Crowley or his epigones. We have begun an inquiry into magical polarity and the role of Babalon, or the Scarlet Woman, in cosmology and initiation. We now move on to some of the key texts in Babalon Unveiled that deal directly with the matter of the Egyptian Book of the Law and the import of the teachings of Aiwass. We shall cover diverse topics along the way, including witches, vampires, the afterlife, and divine imagining. There is also a dramatized rendition of the Song of the Stele of Revealing, which many use for ritual purposes. Series 2, Episode 3, Part 1, Thelemic Doctrine of the Afterlife. The afterlife is a subject frequently ignored. It is generally assumed that the esotericist accepts the doctrine of reincarnation. The mutant version of metempsychosis, or reincarnation, became increasingly popular in the Western world from the time of Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society and onwards. The doctrine is relatively modern, appearing in the middle of the first millennium in both Greek and Hindu philosophy, Orphism, and the Vedas. Greek scholars dispute that Plato, who wrote about it, understood reincarnation in the modern sense. Our notion of reincarnation owes to the classical interpretation of a doctrine shrouded in mystery. If we look at the context of the time in which such ideas emerged, then reincarnation becomes less mysterious. It coincided with the rise of ascetic patriarchal cults. The priestesses of the elder gods were thrown out of the temples or forced into prostitution. Zealots and Pharisees demanded absolute obedience to religious law and falsified biblical scriptures to suit political requirements. This time saw the decline of the ancient Egyptian civilization, which prepared the way for the Hellenistic era and then oblivion. With the rise of asceticism, extreme yoga methods were created aimed at physical purity. 2,500 years ago, the new nation-states abolished the old ways, which included exceedingly antique magical practices such as divination and oracles. The thrust of classical reincarnation is that it works on a merit system. If you are good, you will achieve reincarnation in a higher life form. If you are evil, you will be reborn as a dog, a toad, a worm, or a demon. This concept depends on a strictly hierarchical view of nature consisting of higher life forms and lower life forms, where man is assumed to be the pinnacle of creation. Spirit is seen as the opposer of nature, which should be submissive to the superior might of man. Once we embrace the idea that the soul can be pure, we must then account for impurity and sin. Once we believe a soul can be rewarded in the afterlife, then we must believe the soul can be punished for iniquity. The Egyptian Book of the Law, Liber L 222, refutes all classical notions of purity and sin. It is a lie, this folly against self. The exposure of innocence is a lie. Be strong, O man, lust, enjoy all things of sense and rapture. Fear not that any god shall deny thee for this. Liber L makes the case against reincarnation and in favour of eternal transcendence perfectly clear. According to chapter 2, verses 9, 21, 44, 49, 66 and 73, remember all ye that existence is pure joy, that all the sorrows are but as shadows. They pass and are done, but there is that which remains. Now let it be understood, if the body of the king dissolves, he shall remain in pure ecstasy forever. Aye, feast, rejoice. There is no dread hereafter. There is the dissolution and the eternal ecstasy in the kisses of Nu. I am not of the slaves that perish. Thy death shall be the seal of the promise of our age-long love. Death is forbidden, O man, unto thee. If consciousness is extinguished with the death of the body, then our lives are a bad joke. There is no meaning or purpose in anything. That which is encrypted in Liber L does not include reincarnation. It is a doctrine of immortality. When the body of the king dissolves, that is, the human ego or ahamkara dissolves, there is that which remains, the immortal principle. The popularity of classical reincarnation nonetheless continues unabated. After all, if we believe we are going to come back over countless lifetimes, there is hardly any pressing need to do something called a great work. Traditions far more ancient than metempsychosis supposed the dead to live on in an ancestral spirit or dream world, sometimes called the underworld. The ancestral spirits could then be contacted at particular times or when there was a need. Such practices continue to this day in some parts of the world, in the cults of Voodoo, for example. The ancient Egyptians supported diverse schools of thought, included countless gods or nitas, and many pantheons. The folk tradition was not too dissimilar from other folk traditions around the world. The vital ka, or spirit body of the deceased, was presumed to live on in the underworld, or duat, and offerings of food, drink, and flowers were to be made regularly at the tomb to preserve the existence of the ancestors. If the offerings were not made, then the ka might become a vampire and seek sustenance from among the living. The transcendence of the soul, the achievement of immortality, was an esoteric doctrine and not a folk tradition among the ancient Egyptians. It was preserved for pharaohs, high priests, and other initiates. Likewise with the Eastern tradition, which has it that Atman, the immortal principle, is able to reincarnate in countless different bodies and forms. The doctrine does not admit to the possibility of the soul being born again and again as itself. Hindu classical scholars are well aware of this and are very careful, when interpreting the Bhagavad Gita, for example, to point out that it is Atman, that reincarnates, not the human ego, which has no essential substance or ground. The Book of the Law may readily be understood as an imperative concerning spiritual life or death for those that would dare. The quest for the elixir of life, the immortal stone of the wise, is not to be confused with a quest for psychological self-improvement. In Liber L 134, Nuit replies to Crowley's insistent demands.
But she said, "The ordeals I write not. The rituals shall be half known and half concealed. The law is for all."
The rituals, as with Egyptian hieroglyphs, are not known by the object of the symbol, but by the latency of the symbol. The symbol must be followed back to its source. The law is for all does not mean for every single person in the world. As in the context of other scriptures, all frequently means of all types and manner of persons. The path of esoteric thelema requires ruthless discernment, yet it does not exclude any man or woman by race, religion, or culture. As the governing principle of magical initiation, the law of thelema secretly informs and directs human thought and activity, disrupting and destroying the accretions. However, the thelemic transmission does not allow human reason to prevail against love. The Book of the Law unrelentingly declares war on causal determinism, the error termed the word of sin, in Liber L 141. In L 138 it is given that the soul who endures the ordeals of the path of knowledge may enjoy spiritual ecstasy both during and after earthly existence.
I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith, while in life, upon death, peace unutterable, rest, ecstasy, nor do I demand aught in sacrifice.
The spiritual pulse of thelema is love, while its wisdom is only known through discernment, which is the essential discipline of the path of knowledge, as declared in L 157.
Love is the law, love under will. Nor let the fools mistake love, for there are love and love. There is the dove, and there is the serpent. Choose ye well.
Much of the wisdom conveyed by Aiwass addresses the question of the soul's survival after physical death. The achievement of the soul depends on vital, magical and spiritual factors that have profound import for every man and every woman that is a star. The choice for the soul is understood to be one of life on the one hand, or annihilation on the other. Through the course of initiation, the soul is to be led by Hadit, the esoteric will force, through her own death and resurrection. This is done in order to open a portal or gateway through which others may pass to discover new worlds of beauty and truth. After a short break, we will attempt to shed some new light on the Stele of Revealing, the central icon of the modern cults of thelema. We are going to go into this in some considerable depth. I would put in a reminder here that this second series of Temple of Babalon podcasts is dedicated to the book Babylon Unveiled, Thelemic Monographs, the first book to explain esoteric Thelema. The book itself is dedicated to Rose Edith Kelly, otherwise known as Warda the Seer, the medium for the reception of the Egyptian Book of the Law. Series 2, Episode 3, Part 2. New Light on Stele 666. Ankafnakonsu shall go forth in the light, bearing the lamp and staff of Thelema, among the living souls that dwell upon the earth. The pharaoh Seti I and Ankafnakonsu, the priest and scribe of the Stele of Revealing, frequented the region of Upper Egypt extending from Thebes to Dendera and Abydos, thus the house of life, the house of death, and the house of ordinance. Ankafnakonsu was the opener of the doors of heaven at the temple of Karnak in Thebes, while Seti I built his temple at Abydos. It was one of the priestly official duties of Ankafnakonsu to literally open the doors that led out onto the roof of the temple of Karnak, and so to the sky. At certain times of the year, for example, the heliacal rising of Sirius, Egyptian priests would carry an ornate shrine housing a god on a lengthy procession that culminated on the roof of a temple. The shrine would then be placed so the god could observe the sun rising. The scribe and the pharaoh lived in the late dynastic period. Priestly prophets of Egypt at that time foresaw the ending of their world, in which their secret knowledge would be lost and forgotten for millennia. Elsewhere, the biblical prophet Ezekiel was aflame with the vision of splendor. His visions also foretold of the doom and destruction of civilizations. We have perhaps arrived at a comparable period in the history of human civilization. The Stele of Revealing is the funeral stone of a priest of the god Mentu, who lived and died during the 25th and 26th dynasties of Egypt. Theurgic activation of the funeral stone introduced Thelema to the world at the dawn of the 20th century, albeit beneath a heavy veil. The front side of the stele shows an enthroned god and adoring priest under the nocturnal sky of Nuit and winged sun disk Hedit, or Heru Behedet. Mentu is the name of the enthroned god, usually named Ra or Kuit. Mentu is a name of Set and a special name of Ra as the sun's heat at full strength. Herokuti, Heromakis, Hormaku, the Sphinx of Egypt, and Ra or Kuit are simply different spellings of the same name. The ancient Egyptian mode of analogous thinking seems complex to the modern mind, accustomed as it is to so-called concrete facts and linear strategies. Mentu may be understood as a unified form of Horus and Set. The form of Mentu depicted on the Stele of Revealing combines the attributes of several Egyptian gods, as was customary with the Neteru associated with important cult centres such as Thebes. At the centre right of the stele is a priest of the god Mentu, or Set. The enthroned god depicted at the centre left is Mentu, embodying the attributes of Ra, Horus, Set, and Nekebit, or Kuti, the serpent. Thebes is derived from the Greek name for the place known to the Egyptians as Wasset. It means place of the scepter, and the was, which we call scepter, is identical to the name and image of the god Set. Indeed, the was scepters carried by all high-ranking priests were crowned by the likeness of the god Set. The scepter was typically the length of the human spine and terminated in a two-pronged fork at the base. It is the symbol of dual manifestation. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn referred to the was as the Phoenix Wand, creation of life through the initiation of fire. The phoenix is the Greek term for the Egyptian Bennu, or soul of Onu. It is usually depicted as a bird, quite often the sacred ibis, whereas the was is the image of Set. Creation of life through the initiation of fire corresponds to the 19th path of Leo, the lion. Oromachuu is the god of the two horizons, or Horus in the sky. The Sphinx of Egypt is the god of the horizon, as she points towards the place where the sun rises at the equinox or first point of Aries. Thus, by precession of the equinoxes, she now points towards the cusp of Aquarius, or Nuit, the star 17 of the tarot trumps. The future aeon, referred to in Liber Elvel Legis 357 as Erumachis, is not in the future, but is here and now, and for all eternity. In 1904, Crowley employed the services of an Egyptologist to get the stele translated, then applied his poetic skills to render this in a manner that conveyed his magical ideas and understanding. His rendition is easy to memorize for ritual use. I am the Lord of Thebes, and I the inspired fourth speaker of Mentu. For me unveils the veiled sky the self-slain Ankh-Khafna Khonsu, whose words are truth. I invoke, I greet thy presence, O Ra-Hoor-Khut. Unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods and death to tremble before thee. I adore thee. Appear on the throne of Ra. Open the ways of the Khu. Lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Khabs run through to stir me or still me. Om, let it fill me. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra and Tum, of Khefra and of Ahator. I am thy Theban, O Mentu, the prophet Ankh-Khafna Khonsu. By Beznamut my breast I beat, by wise Tanek I weave my spell. Show thy star splendour, O Nut. Bid me within thine house to dwell, O winged snake of light, Hedit. Abide with me, Ra-Hoor-Khut. Those who practice the Mass of Oromachuu will know that this invocation becomes truly effective when combined with the correct ritual mudras, or seals. By forming the mudras with the body, the magician becomes a hieroglyph, a living word, at one with the words and images. When the hieroglyphs are looked into closely, further depths of meaning may be plumbed. Crowley's mantram begins, "Unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath." The ancient Egyptians were not overly concerned with theological unity, for the gods are polymorphous, and in nature all manifestation is dual. When manifestation is withdrawn, it is understood as the circle of Nuit, or all. In Thelema, this is traditionally formularized as 0 equals 2, Nuit and Hadit, the ubiquitous point in the circle. Something is certainly being showed or revealed, and while it is not wrong to assume the Kabbalistic Keter, the crown, the god wears a solar crown, the Egyptian Eka conveys a subtler depth and range of meaning. The might of thy breath is a translation of Tufur Biu, which includes the plural of souls or spirits. It is easy to follow Crowley's line of thought, for in the Kabbalah, breath, mind, and spirit are interchangeable terms summed up as ruach. Yet the Egyptian sense is of many souls or spirits. To further our understanding, we need to know something about the various parts of the soul. One valuable source is E.A. Wallace Budge's introduction to his special 1923 edition of The Book of the Dead. That title, by which the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Light is now known, was first given it by tomb robbers, by the way. A further source, less well known, but an astounding narrative in its own right, is Seti's Egypt, which is the documentary account of Dorothy Eady. This, by the way, is an extraordinary book. The reference is Hani El Zaini and Catherine Dease, St. Lynn's Press. It is only necessary here to summarise the key parts of the soul as described by Budge. Kat, the physical body or shell, the corruptible and the perishable. The Ka, the double, an abstract form of the person that especially signifies the vital energy. The Ka dwells in the body or tomb, though under some circumstances it can wander about at will. The Ba, the heart-soul, often depicted as a bird with a human face, most often dwells with the Ka and is able to assume a material or non-material form at will. The Ab, the heart, not the physical organ, the soul. It is also associated with intelligence of the heart, especially intuition and analogous thinking. The Kaibet, the shadow. Like the Ka, it may be nourished by offerings and can have an existence apart from the physical body. The Ku, the spiritual soul, often depicted in the form of an ibis and sometimes interchangeable with the notion of a spirit, as a soul which under no circumstances could die. Budge. The Ku is cognate with the Judeo-Christian term holy guardian angel, which the Greeks called Ogoides, or shining one. The Sekhem means power, also vitality, though not that of the earthly Ka, as the Sekhem dwells in heaven with the Kus. The name of the Egyptian lion goddess, Sekhet or Sekhmet, is the feminine noun. The Ren is the name, which has spiritual and magical import, for it is linked to the soul or spirit. The Sahu is a spiritual body that springs forth from the material body and forms a habitation for the soul. The Chabs, or Star of Da'at, is not listed by Budge, but is nonetheless vital to our understanding of Thelema. In Liber L 1:8-9, Aiwass declares, "The Chabs is in the coup, not the coup in the Chabs." Budge did not describe the Eka. The Eka is named on the reverse side of the stele of revealing and forms the first syllable of the mantram derived by Crowley from the second stanza of his poetized translation. Akadua tuferbiu biyachefu dudu neraf anetaru. An alternative translation of the second stanza in Egyptian might read as follows. Oh, how I have longed for thee to appear in the splendour of thy shining rays. Thou hast set the wizened path before thy blessed souls. Secret are the ways. O thou warrior at the gates of heaven, to thee I give praise. The ancient Egyptian language was such that the layers of possible meaning are practically infinite. For example, there is frequent repetition of a phrase for particular emphasis. There are puns, for the play on words was much loved by the Egyptians. There are etymological cross-references to actual earth locations known to the initiate and traveller. Tuferbiu suggests, among other things, an ancient gnome centre that housed a subterranean labyrinth, in the centre of which was a secret shrine to Horus. In Seti's Egypt, the functions of the Eka are described in detail. I will give you a reference to that book again, Seti's Egypt, Hani El-Zaini and Catherine Dees, St. Lynn's Press. In Budge's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary, there are many meanings and functions for Eka, as both noun and verb. Perhaps not surprisingly, they agree with those given by Seti in the aforementioned book. Principally, the sense of Eka is to soar, fly through the air as a bird. It also has the meaning of reaching out, which is the gesture made by the priest Ankafna-Konsu on the stele of revealing. Other spellings convey fire, shining, radiance, and spirit. According to Seti, the key spiritual and magical function of the Eka is to unite the Ka, Ba, and Ku, so the Ka is then able to freely travel to any world at will. On the third and lower portion of the stele of revealing, the funerary oration of the priest of the Theban cult of Ankafna-Konsu declares he is the son of Bez-Namut, a priest with the same titles, and his mother Tenek, a musician for Amen-Ra. On the reverse of the stele, it is stated that his soul has passed through the gate of the west, or western peak, known by the Egyptians as the passage to Amentet, the land of the dead. Thus, Ankafna-Konsu may travel the worlds at will and even visit the earth. His name is after all that of the moon god or sky rider, Konsu. In standing before the sceptre-bearing Ra-Mentu, as shown on the obverse of the stele, the priestly prophet is as the moon shining forth with the sun's reflected radiance. On the reverse side of the stele, Ankafna-Konsu declares he has joined himself to the earth even in death. Do not speak against me in the presence of the great Lord of the West. Although I have joined myself to the earth through the western gate of the sky, may I endure upon the earth. Ankafna-Konsu shall go forth in the light, bearing the lamp and staff of Thelema, among the living souls that dwell upon the earth. That is my translation of the text, by the way. The word for will or desire, meriteth, is also the verb to love. The word is therefore identical to thelema, 93, which is equal to agape, 93. Love is the law, love under will. In Seti's Egypt, the pharaoh Seti I also tells how upon death in Thebes, he passed through the gate of the west. During life, the Ba, Aka, and Ka dwell always in the Ka'at, the physical body. As you well know, the Aka may be freed by one who knows magic, and it can travel to distant places or even to Amenti. There are a few learned magicians who can also set the Ka free during life, but this is not a good thing to do. If the Ba leaves the cat will immediately die. After death, the Ba, Eka, and Ka are reunited in Amenti, but the Ka may prefer to return and visit the earth. It is free to come and go at will, and this makes no difference to the reunited Ba and Eka, which have become as they were on earth. In Amenti, there is no sickness or physical pain, but how terrible can be the pain of the heart. I was at Thebes when I left this world, and I passed by way of Peak of the West. The tale of Dorothy Eady is no less improbable to the material scientist or rational thinker than is the reception of the Book of the Law in Cairo, in spite of Crowley's efforts to make his account of it seem plausible. The account of Dorothy Eady is so detailed and factually accurate that even modern-day Egyptologists will not attempt to debunk it. Curiously, the Egyptologist Dorothy Eady was not only born in 1904, but was also mentored as a young girl by E.A. Wallace Budge. The Eka may be used to travel about, but it cannot do anything with physical matter, because it is not of the physical body. Seti has explained how certain priests with knowledge of such things, having power of their Eka, may have planned to revisit the earth, even in future times. In this way, the pharaoh Seti I was able to visit Dorothy Eady, and Ankafna Khonsu and Aiwass, his mentor, were able to reveal the mysteries of the Theban gods of the Stele of Revealing to Rose Edith Kelly, or Warda the Seer, in Cairo, 1904. After another short break, we are going to look at two further monographs from Babylon Unveiled, Thelemic monographs. The first deals with the divine imagination. The second and last for this episode is concerned with the witches' Sabbath, so called. Series 2, Episode 3, Part 3, Magic of Divine Imagining. Magic greatly depends on two factors, will and imagination. These correspond to the wand and cup of art. The English mystic William Blake understood the occult aspect of will and desire. Blake held the divine power of imagining in such regard that he created a proper noun, imagination, as a term for Christ or Logos. Magic typically utilizes the act of drawing or tracing out figures, such as pentagrams, hexagrams, and sigils, imaginatively upon the astral ether. Inscribing such figures is effectively no different than handwriting. The ink is the occult force conveyed through the cup of imagination. The pen is the wand or thumb, also the will of the magician. The paper is the fluid astral ether impressed upon by will and imagination. The act of writing or drawing symbols connects the hand with the eye, which in turn memorably places the figures in deep mind. This serves as a key to the latent source of the figures that pre-exists our conscious awareness. According to the magical correspondences, the hand and the eye are cognate terms. The hand of 5 is He, the window of divine imagining and letter of the 15th path of Nuit's creative star fire. The number 5 is that of the pentagram, the star of Nuit. The grand number of 5 is 15, and the 15th tarot or 2 is placed on the path of Ayin, which means an eye. What we see is what we are. The idea is at one with the imagination. The aim of magic is to follow the symbol back to its source in the divine imagining. The wisdom of ancient Egypt instructs us that the name, and therefore the vibration of any god, is that god. The ancient Greeks would not say the name of Hades aloud because they did not want him to notice them and perhaps become overly interested in their soul. According to the classical Greek tradition, Hades is the lord of hell and death and detains souls forever in the underworld. The fearful Greek taboo may have been the source of other unspeakable deity names. The name of the vengeful demiurge YHVH, Tetragrammaton, of the Old Testament and Torah is supposed not to be uttered. In Goethe's version of the timeless play Faust, all the Magus did to invoke the spirits was to show them a picture of the holy hexagram in his grimoire. The hexagram is the symbol of macrocosmos, the greater world. By the Hermetic doctrine of correspondences, as above and so below, the spirits are thus compelled to obedience. When Mephisto makes his appearance, Faust asks him, "Was it not the power of my mighty spells and conjurations that summoned you?" And Mephisto tells him it has nothing to do with that, since Faust was inclined towards evil. The devil did not need to be summoned, for he was already aware of what Faust was up to and would have come sooner or later. When men, usually learned gentlemen, wayward monks or clergy, performed magical rituals in the 15th and 16th centuries, merely opening a book and seeing a hexagram or some such figure set them in awe of God. Add to that the fear of getting found out by the authorities, which meant cloaking such operations with utmost secrecy, and we can understand how their magic was extremely effective. We have to work a lot harder at it now. Magic corresponds to Mercury, the Roman name for the Greek Hermes, and the Egyptian Jahuti, the god of writing, books, and knowledge. Magic and the word or logos are therefore inseparable terms. Books, real ones, not the digital fakes, are reliquaries for the knowledge of countless generations. Such a book can open doorways in the imagination through the power of the written word. Such doorways are formed from the matter itself, the base material as a repository for the imagining. The imagining is in turn the agent for the soul's transfiguration. To engage on this level, we must have enough time not to worry about time. We must be free from all other distractions and able to focus the mind without interruption. The reader then becomes an active participant, wholly absorbed in the imaginative creation and recreation of inner worlds. So far as magical knowledge and expertise goes, the real book collection is the starting point. True knowledge comes with experience. Getting out in the field, comparing notes, thinking a great deal, engaging with the necessary practical experimentation. Survival of any species depends on adaptation to changing conditions, new knowledge. We have access to far more information now than anyone can handle. Information does not equal knowledge. Dissociation of mind and senses comes about through overexposure to digital images, film, television, and the millions of contradictory thoughts and opinions that pour forth unceasingly through the media platforms, day and night. While the web is now a useful device for research, so long as we resist the assault of peripheral nonsense, it is also a digital scrying mirror into hell. Misinformation, uninformed opinion, and the utterly banal are merged in a mephitic ocean of babble. It has become common to see people of all ages walking, even in the rural countryside or by the sea coast, with a digital audio device, sending its metronomic square wave impulse directly to their ears, thus ensuring they are oblivious to their environment. Many prefer to run rather than walk, as a form of recreational exercise. What are we running away from? What is it that we do not wish to hear, to see? Is there something we would rather not think about at all? Man has become the most ill-equipped of all creatures on earth, since all others spend the greater part of their time paying close attention to their environment. Wild birds and creatures study the world in the utmost detail, mapping it with senses not even dreamed of by the human. The majority of humans are now afraid to go anywhere without a cell phone, lest they should miss a message, a text, a call. We have been seduced into thinking we are no longer alone, when in fact we are more alone than ever, isolated from self, others, and the natural environment by our own need to stay in touch. Silence has entered the realms of the unknown. Fewer persons than ever are capable of real meditation or even coherent thought. Amnesia is fast becoming the normal condition. The machines no longer serve. They have become the masters, and their operators have become obedient slaves. It is no small wonder that our systems of government and business are heartless and cruel, operating according to statistics, facts and figures that cannot in themselves reveal any truth, for they can be manipulated to serve the interests of the soulless machine and its slave, the dissociated human ego. The ways of magic and of true knowledge are open to any child of the 21st century that understands the need to be the master of machines and not the slave of them. Series 2, Episode 3, Part 4. The Witches' Sabbath. The moment that men began to claim to be gods, to personalize the creative power manifested through astral and elemental forces, was the moment that men ceased to be gods. As soon as men claimed the power for themselves, they had to create theologies of good and evil to explain the dichotomy of disruptive or immoral forces within the self. The personalization of the source of creative power took place simultaneously with the invention of monotheism. While polytheism allows the free flow of psychic force in all its expressions, the religions of the one God restrict or curtail the psychosexual energy that informs nature and being. The bread that people ate in the Middle Ages frequently contained ergot, which has powerful psychoactive properties. Ergot was so common in bread that until the 1850s, it was believed to be a natural part of the rye plant from which bread was made. Tales of devil worship, often mixed with elements of Jewish ritual practices, were used to terrify a mainly illiterate population into paying more money to the church. Add to that a little imaginative fantasy, doubtlessly helped along by the ergot, and it was only one small step to the witches' Sabbath, the dreadful orgy where naked women shamelessly cavort around a hideous, phantasmal devil. Witchcraft reached its apotheosis with the infamous book written by the German Catholic Heinrich Kramer and published in 1486. The title of the book was Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches. Previous to the publication of that book, the Church was sceptical that such a thing as witchcraft even existed. The real purpose of the book was to introduce punitive legislation to deal with the many heretics that had arisen by the 13th century, daring to question religious dogma. It was perhaps due to the egocentricities of the writer that the chosen victims for trial and prosecution were, according to Kramer, more often women than men. The bias is understandable if we consider that women had been demonized since at least the writing of the second biblical book of Genesis, around 500 to 600 BCE. Curiously, magic was certainly practiced extensively before the 15th century. There was a great deal of interest in Kabbalah, the sorcery of evocation, and theurgic practices, some of which were not too different from what we do today. Those who practiced magic at that time were largely educated men, and so of the nobility. The source books were written in classical or ecclesiastical Latin and Greek. Thanks to Malleus Maleficarum, the notion of magic and sorcery was effectively transferred from educated men with libraries at their disposal to uneducated women. Ironically, nearly all those that were prosecuted for being witches would have been regular churchgoers. In those days, everyone was. People only began to fear magic and sorcery when it was put forward that anyone, even the poor and uneducated, could command infernal powers simply by devoting themselves to the love of the devil. Witchcraft and the evil power of the devil did not originate with Judeo-Christian theology as such. It originated with what was essentially a work of fiction composed by a German clergyman in the 15th century. There is no good or evil force in the universe as such. The idea that humans might gain power from a supernatural being embodying cosmic evil is pure fantasy. There is no dark force existing beyond our own imagining. Nonetheless, the idea that a person, whether educated or not, could obtain supernatural powers by simply getting on the side of Satan was, and still is, a very powerful one. The idea of Satan as a prince of darkness is itself a confounded one. According to the book of Matthew 4:1-11, where the name appears, Satan is the name of an angel appointed by God to test Jesus. Satan is therefore comparable to the Egyptian Set, the initiator through trial and ordeal. Malleus Maleficarum, which pretended to be the product of fact-finding research, was a bestseller in the 15th and 16th centuries. Various names were cited to lend the treatise authority. The result was that thousands of persons, the majority of them women, were tried, tortured horribly, and executed. The fear of the educated governing authorities happened to coincide with the fear and prejudice of an uneducated populace, and was blown out of all proportion by what seemed like credible evidence. Sadly, little has changed since then. Vinum Sabbati is the Latin term for wine of the Sabbath. Down the ages, people have tried to describe Vinum Sabbati as an actual physical substance, for example, a special concoction laced with hallucinogenic drugs. There certainly were such concoctions all over Europe in the times of the classical Greeks, and some were highly skilled at producing them. Such drugs were not outlawed by the state until the 20th century. The world of matter coalesces with the world of spirit on the astral plane, visible to some, invisible to most. That is the true medium for the Vinum Sabbati. What then is the special ingredient that some have perceived as an elixir of the gods and others as a cocktail for devil worshippers? The substance, variously called the immortal stone, lapis philosophorum, or miraculous medicine of the philosophers, cannot be weighed and measured by the means of material scientism. From the point of view of esoteric thelema, the mysterious substance is the kabs in the ku, as declared by Aiwass in the Egyptian Book of the Law, Liber L 1:8. The kabs is in the ku, not the ku in the kabs. The seed star of consciousness projection is in the astrosome, or body of light. The world appears to us through that power. Truth is in the eye of the beholder. The lurid symbolism of medieval witchcraft, fermented in the witch's cauldron of fear-filled imagining, may be interpreted thus. Magic, sorcery, and yoga, understood in the purest sense, is not to gain power in the world, which is a powerful illusion. Real magic serves the purpose of opening gateways to the infinite in the subtle fabric of the mind stuff of the universe. Across the threshold, beyond the limits of ordinary human consciousness, there exist intelligences that dwarf the mind of man. The purpose of the great work has ever been to make contact with such intelligences. The devils and demons that populate the grimoires of the occult, as well as many works of fiction, are masks veiling a truth that is an abomination to those who would control and enslave the terrestrial sphere. The human ego essentially has no existence from its own side. The phenomenal outpourings of the tree of knowledge veil the numinous source of all. The conceptual mind is merely a mask woven from the emptiness of the void, and which therefore obscures the true state of affairs, or reality. That brings episode 3 to a close. The piece of music I played was Valsa, composed by Heitor Villalobos. Thank you for your attention. Love is the law. Love under will.